The most dangerous people in your life don't announce their intentions. They don't carry weapons or make obvious threats. Instead, they operate in the shadows of human psychology, slowly draining your energy, distorting your reality, and sabotaging your growth while maintaining a facade of normalcy or even helpfulness. Carl Jung, through decades of clinical observation, identified specific personality patterns that consistently destroy others' psychological well-being. These aren't random toxic behaviors, they're systematic psychological attacks that target the unconscious mind. Jung recognized that certain individuals seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to locate and exploit others' psychological vulnerabilities. What makes these people particularly dangerous is their invisibility. They often appear charming, successful, or even caring. By the time their victims realize what's happening, significant psychological damage has already occurred. Jung's warning wasn't just theoretical, it was practical. He observed that these three specific types of people could derail anyone's psychological development, destroy their sense of reality, and leave them questioning their own sanity. The energy vampire. Jung observed certain individuals who seemed to feed off others' psychological energy, leaving their targets feeling inexplicably drained, confused, and depleted. These aren't metaphorical vampires. They're people whose psychological structure requires constant external energy to maintain their sense of self. The energy vampire operates through what Jung called psychological participation mystique, a primitive psychological state where boundaries between self and other become blurred. They unconsciously merge with others' energy fields, extracting vitality while contributing nothing in return. Jung wrote in The Relations Between the Ego and the Unconscious. The psychological relationship between doctor and patient is a mutual one. But the energy vampire perverts this natural exchange, creating a one-way flow that benefits only them. These individuals are masters of manufactured crisis. They create constant emergencies, dramas, and problems that demand others' immediate attention and emotional investment. Just when you think you've helped them resolve an issue, a new crisis emerges. They possess an uncanny ability to identify empathetic, giving people and quickly establish intense emotional connections. They share intimate details about their struggles, creating artificial intimacy that makes you feel special and needed. But Jung warned that this apparent vulnerability is actually a sophisticated hunting technique. The energy vampire's most insidious weapon is emotional projection. They unconsciously dump their anxiety, depression, anger, and confusion into your psychological space. After spending time with them, you find yourself feeling emotions that don't belong to you. Recognition comes through paying attention to your energy levels. If you consistently feel drained, confused, or emotionally hijacked after interacting with someone, you've encountered an energy vampire. The Shadow Projector. Perhaps the most psychologically damaging of Jung's three types is the Shadow Projector, someone who cannot tolerate their own darkness and systematically projects it onto others. Jung wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, "The shadow is the thing a person has no wish to be." The shadow projector takes this avoidance to pathological extremes. These individuals possess an almost supernatural ability to locate and activate others' insecurities, wounds, and self-doubts. They become psychological archaeologists, excavating your buried shame and reflecting it back to you amplified. What's particularly insidious is that they often target your greatest strengths, reframing them as weaknesses. Jung observed that shadow projectors operate through what he called psychological infection. They transmit their own unconscious conflicts into others' minds through subtle suggestions, implications, and emotional manipulations. You begin seeing yourself through their distorted lens, doubting your perceptions and questioning your worth. The shadow projector's favorite weapon is gaslighting, systematically undermining your reality testing by contradicting your experiences, denying their behavior, and suggesting you're overly sensitive or mentally unstable. Jung warned that this technique specifically targets what he called the reality function, your ability to distinguish between inner and outer reality. These individuals are masters of psychological reversal. When confronted about their behavior, they immediately flip the script, positioning themselves as the victim and you as the aggressor. Jung noted that this reversal serves a dual purpose. It absolves them of responsibility while simultaneously implanting guilt and self-doubt in their target. Perhaps most destructively, shadow projectors actively work to isolate you from supportive relationships. They plant seeds of doubt about your friends, family, and colleagues, gradually convincing you that you can only trust their version of reality. Watch for people who consistently leave you questioning your own judgment, feeling guilty for setting boundaries, or doubting your memories of interactions. The Growth Saboteur. The third type Jung identified as the Growth Saboteur, who systematically undermines others' attempts at psychological development and self-actualization. Jung wrote in The Development of Personality, "The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. The Growth Saboteur represents the tribe's resistance to individual development. These individuals appear supportive of your goals while simultaneously creating obstacles to achieving them. They offer help that creates dependence, give advice that leads nowhere, and provide encouragement that actually discourages. Their sabotage is so subtle that you often blame yourself for lack of progress." Jung observed that growth saboteurs are unconsciously threatened by others' development because it highlights their own psychological stagnation. They cannot tolerate witnessing someone else's transformation because it activates their own unlived potential, a phenomenon Jung called the unlived life. The growth saboteur employs what Jung termed psychological leveling, bringing others down to their level of development rather than rising to meet them. They accomplish this through constant criticism disguised as concern, impossible standards disguised as high expectations, and discouragement disguised as realism. These individuals are masters of timing their interventions. Just when you're gaining momentum toward a goal, experiencing a breakthrough, or developing new confidence, they appear with perfectly timed doubt, criticism, or crisis that derails your progress. Perhaps most insidiously, they redefine growth itself, convincing you that real development means accepting limitations, lowering expectations, or focusing on others' needs instead of your own. They turn psychological development into psychological imprisonment. Why you attract them. Jung understood that these toxic encounters aren't random. They're magnetized by unconscious psychological patterns. His concept of psychological complexes explains why certain people repeatedly attract the same destructive relationships. You attract energy vampires when you have unhealed wounds around self-worth and boundaries. Your unconscious need to feel needed creates a beacon for those who need constant support. Shadow projectors target people with underdeveloped psychological defenses and strong empathetic abilities. Growth saboteurs are drawn to those with unrealized potential who lack confidence in their own development. Jung wrote in Man and His Symbols, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." These toxic attractions feel like fate, but they're actually unconscious psychological patterns seeking resolution. Breaking these patterns requires what Jung called individuation, becoming conscious of your unconscious psychological material. This means examining why you feel responsible for others' emotions, why you doubt your own perceptions, and why you seek permission to grow. Your psychological defense. Jung's protection strategy centers on what he called conscious relationship to the unconscious. This means developing awareness of your psychological vulnerabilities before others can exploit them. First, strengthen your psychological boundaries. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But transformation should be mutual and beneficial, not parasitic." Practice what Jung called active imagination, consciously engaging with your own shadow material so others can't use it against you. When you accept your capacity for selfishness, anger, and limitation, shadow projectors lose their power to shame you with these qualities. Develop what Jung termed psychological objectivity, the ability to observe interactions without being consumed by them. This creates emotional distance that protects against energy vampires and manipulation. Most importantly, commit to your own individuation process. Jung observed that people who are actively developing psychologically become less attractive to toxic individuals because they're no longer easy targets. The ultimate protection is becoming whole enough within yourself that you don't need others to complete you, validate you, or give you permission. When you stop seeking external completion, you stop attracting those who profit from your incompleteness. These three types of people will always exist, but they only have power over those who remain unconscious of their own psychological patterns. Jung's warning comes with a promise. Know yourself, and no one can destroy what you've become.